If you're in the process of separating from or divorcing a woman with strong narcissistic traits, I want you to listen carefully, because one of the biggest mistakes good men make is assuming that she wants the same thing. So, you might be trying to get a fair and quick resolution, but she might want a pound of flesh. I'm Lisa LeBlanc. I'm a therapist, life coach, and I'm also trained and certified in mediation and conflict resolution. And I've seen many good men make the same mistake, trying to reason with someone who isn't negotiating for resolution, but for retribution. And if you don't understand that difference, you can burn years, fortunes, and even your nervous system trying to play fair in a game that's totally rigged. In this video, I'm going to show you 7 warfare tactics that a narcissistic ex may use in divorce. And then I'll show you how to protect yourself. Before we get started, let me just say that I am not talking about ordinary divorce conflict here. I'm talking about truly high conflict dynamics where domination, retaliation, and ego are the driving forces. Okay? So tactic number 1 is that she will bleed you financially. She'll fight over everything, demand way more than what's fair, and burn legal fees. And sometimes the goal isn't money. It's not a better settlement. It's to make the process so expensive that you start to surrender just to make it stop. That's financial warfare. The second tactic is she wears you down emotionally by stalling, creating unnecessary delays, and dragging things out until exhaustion makes you start giving things up. The third tactic is that enough is never enough. So even when you make a concession, now all of a sudden she wants something else. There's another demand, then another. And compromise becomes a treadmill until you eventually realize that what appears like movement is just more manipulation. The fourth tactic is she's using the legal process as a weapon. So at this point, it's being used to punish and dominate you. Because when narcissistic injury is a driving force, it's all about wounded pride. It's about humiliation and the loss of control. So it's not about reaching an agreement. It's about inflicting maximum pain and making you suffer. It's about crushing you in the process. The fifth tactic is she flips the script. And this happens all the time. Suddenly, she's the wounded one and you're the villain. Stories get spun, awful stories, and people get recruited, friends, family, professionals, and the goal is to control the narrative, isolate you, humiliate you, and turn other people against you. The sixth tactic is she tries to bait you, and she will push your buttons, trying to provoke you. Maybe it's a text designed to make you explode, a false allegation dropped right before a hearing, a parenting accusation meant to pull you into a panicked response. Because once you're emotional and off balance, you're a lot more likely to make mistakes, send the wrong email, make emotional decisions, and in a high conflict divorce, those mistakes can be costly. The seventh tactic is that she keeps the conflict alive because the conflict is the control. Because as long as you're still in conflict, there's still a hook in you. And as long as you're reacting, defending, explaining, she still has psychological leverage. She still has some control over you and your life. And once you understand these tactics, you start seeing why one of the biggest mistakes good men make is trying to solve this through more direct communication with her. Even after everything you've been through, you might still be thinking, if we could just sit down for an honest conversation, we could get this settled. But that is a fantasy. If communication has been distorted, reactive, avoidant, or manipulative for years, divorce is not the place or time where that's suddenly going to change. If you are truly dealing with a narcissistic partner, my first tip for you is stop trying to resolve the divorce through the relationship and start solving it through structure. Mediators, lawyers, process, containment. And by containment, I mean creating a structure that protects you from being pulled back into old emotional patterns, guilt, manipulation, or conversations that historically have never gone anywhere. And this is not hostility. It's a boundary that helps ensure that the process, not emotions, drive your decisions. So the more emotional the climate becomes, the more procedural you need to become. And make sure to use a mediator who understands high conflict personalities. Look for someone seasoned. And if you can consider working with a former judge as a mediator, there can be a real strategic advantage in this because high conflict personalities, narcissists, sometimes respond to authority in ways that they don't respond to reason. My second tip is to know your thresholds in advance and negotiate strategically. Think about your ideal outcome, your acceptable range, your absolute walkaway points. Know your numbers and write it down before ego and emotion enter the room. Start with a credible position. Leave room for negotiation and move deliberately. And avoid punitive positions, reactive hardball, concessions made out of fatigue, or trying to win on every point. And ask yourself, what truly matters? What can I let go of? Where is paying a little bit more cheaper than another year or two of this war? And where it serves your overall strategy, sometimes it helps to let her feel like she got a win. In some high conflict dynamics, perceived victory can reduce escalation. A concession on something secondary may protect something far more important. And that's not surrender. That's sophisticated strategy. My third tip is watch out for the part of you that wants to rescue, appease, or smooth things over. Divorce often reactivates the very role that trapped you in this relationship in the first place. The caretaker, the fixer, the peacekeeper, the rescuer. So, even after everything that she's done, everything that's happened, you might still feel pulled to smooth things over, to explain, to absorb unfairness, to try to make her happy and prove that you're a good guy. So, be careful. That may be the trauma bond dressed up in a legal suit. In divorce, self-abandonment can disguise itself as cooperation. And of course, it's good to be reasonable. But notice when you're collapsing into appeasement. So, when she starts guilting, shaming, blaming, raging, and pushing all those old buttons to see if they still work, remember that it's not your job to prove yourself to her, or to regulate her, or rescue her. Your job is to hold your frame and not take the bait. And if there are children involved, this becomes even more important because in these types of high conflict divorces, children often get pulled into the tension, into the narratives, into the emotional swings. So your job is to be the stable parent in this unstable situation. To help you with this, my fourth tip is to protect your nervous system throughout this process. High conflict divorce is not only legal, it becomes physiological and it can pull you into hypervigilance, anxiety, rumination, panic, obsession. So protect your nervous system. Reach out to your support system, consult professionals, get a therapist or coach if you can, and use distress tolerance strategies every day to calm your nervous system because an unregulated man is easier to provoke, easier to destabilize, and more likely to make costly decisions. The fifth tip is to change how you're interpreting her behavior. Because if you're taking everything she's doing personally, you're a lot more likely to be reactive. So instead of seeing her as the enemy out to get you, try to see the pattern for what it is. A set of predictable behaviors driven by instability, reactivity, and the need for control. This shift can give you some distance and emotional detachment from all the things that she's doing and is going to do, regardless of your response. And one more thing to think about. You get to decide what kind of man you're going to be throughout this process. Not based on how she behaves, but based on your values and your integrity. High conflict divorces will test your character. And if you're not anchored in your own truth and your authentic self, you can easily get pulled into a version of yourself that you don't recognize. My sixth tip is to make sure that you're documenting things. Keep records of communication, agreements, incidents, not obsessively, but consistently, because in these situations, narratives do get rewritten. And also, keep communication brief and emotionless. When in doubt, shorten your response. Remove all emotion. Keep it factual. And it can be very helpful to run it through AI before sending it. Lastly, negotiate to end this, not for justice. And this might be the biggest mindset shift of all. Don't go into mediation trying to extract accountability, an apology, or even a sense of justice. Negotiate for terms that you can live with so that you can move on with your life. Sometimes the goal is not a perfect landing. It's simply to land the plane in whatever way you can, because a rough landing is better than flying around endlessly in circles, burning fuel until you crash. You don't need to win every battle. You don't need to prove she's wrong. You don't need to be understood. You just need to land the plane and get out intact. That's the win.